When you look at the works of Carol Anderson, specifically The White Rage, the book that he wrote on 2016, there's a point that he says that the fact that we are having black people that understands themselves, black people that understands economy, black people that have their life figured out, all these things make white people triggered, make white people raged. And I just thought when I first interacted with this work, White Rage, I thought this is just one of those books that people talk about race. But when I get to hear and see how these things really unravel in the United States, I get to realize that indeed it was the truth. So many times, even when you try to look at history, when black people were thriving economically, you can get to understand that this was making this group of people so sad. And that's why they decided to clean out all these black cities that were thriving economically. And even today, there's so much that is happening, especially what is called the black joy, right? The black joy really makes these people sad. And other scholars have also talked about the issue of black joy because whenever something positive is going on in the lives of black people, we are always having a group of people that are ready to sabotage all these good things that are happening. And so, brothers and sisters, I want us to watch this video. It is really important for us to always take a look at these things because I don't always just like talking about these things without showing you the actuality, how these things happen in real time.
I think white people are so triggered by black joy because they have zero control over it. And white people are all about control. And anything they don't get to control and manage and dictate freaks them the hell out.
They don't get to be the leader.
White rage is not about visible violence, but white rage is subtle. It is corrosive. It operates through the state legislatures, through Congress, through the judiciary, through school boards. It cloaks itself in legalities. Because it's so quiet, it's so subtle, you don't see. And so I set out to blow graphite onto that fingerprint, to be able to trace white rage throughout time to 2016. And one of the things that became clear to me as I started thinking through how white rage works, it became clear to me that the presence of black people was not the trigger for white rage. It is the presence of black people with ambition. The presence of black people with drive. The presence of black people with aspirations. The presence of black people who achieve. It's the presence of black people who refuse to accept their subjugation. The presence of black people who demand their rights. That's the trigger for white rage. And this society has therefore punished black resilience and black resolve.
All right, racists, let's talk about your distaste for black joy. Racist America fumes at the sight of happiness, especially when that person smiling is black. It's as if this country specializes in anger Olympics. Being a little too happy disturbs the patriotism. 3 or more laughs in one place is like being investigated by a mall cop. I'm gonna need to see some ID. Because deep down, they believe that pain is the only state that black indigenous people are allowed to live in. Black people start laughing too loud at their cousin's cookout. They throw on some Frankie Beverly. They start dancing with their auntie in a sundress while the ribs are sizzling. Instantly, their lives are in danger. It's like watching a perfect example of a case study on people who have a problem with control. It's like their obsession isn't just with control, it's like with the optics of it as well. They want to be seen as dominant in the space, because they seem to disappear when there is black joy. When you throw your graduation cap in the air, surrounded by your entire family in matching t-shirts, they don't see achievement, they see defiance. Because in their minds, success was never black people's storyline. The truth is, black joy is a glitch in the racist lies that they feed themselves. They built a whole myth of superiority that only works if you're miserable, delusional, insecure, jealous, and mediocre. mediocre. When black people shift the world with their joy and laughter, the racist's entire self-image starts to crack. This is why racists gatekeep golf courses, ban urban dress codes, side-eye loud laughter, and call the cops when the music's just a little too bassy. Unnecessary hate and determination to ruin black people's happiness is a disease, a brain-eating amoeba that siphons the cognition out of America's privileged society. And what hurts the most is that happiness and black joy is more infectious.
The videos that are going to be featured in this episode are going to be telling you some of white interference, especially in black spaces, right? When black people are trying to do great things, when black people are trying to, have their own forums and all these things, it's not that they're trying to be secluded. They're trying to seclude themselves, but at least they recognize that they need to set time for themselves, for their joy, to celebrate some of the achievements that they've made, or to do a couple of things that they have done. But somewhere, somehow, you will always have some people to interfere. We call them currents. Please let me know what you think about this video. I'm your host and presenter, G-Dog Stories. And for those who are watching me for the first time, I'm just going to be asking you to please subscribe to the channel, join the membership, and really get to see what I can offer you. And for those who wish to buy me a coffee, you can buy me a coffee through my Cash App. I won't mind. I'll be really grateful for the support that you're giving me. But until then, let's watch the video. I'll be back, and then I'll be sharing my thoughts in regards to this, because this is so much important.
Word that comes to mind when you hear the name Donald Trump?
Oh, I prefer not to answer, but I am one of the festival organizers, and we have rented out this space. So I would kindly request that you move and leave the location. If you guys are on the sidewalk, I can't stop you from being on the sidewalk, but we have rented out this space. We have it reserved with the city, and we are asking you to leave.
Yeah, so is this a public park?
It's a reserved space at this time.
Yeah, so I'm just going to give you a little bit of information so you can take this and do what you want with it. I'm not going to be leaving because this is a public park, and whether or not you have a permit here does not change this word that comes to mind when you hear the name Donald Trump.
Oh, I prefer not to answer, but I am one of the festival organizers, and we have rented out this space. So I would kindly request that you move and leave the location. If you guys are on the sidewalk, I can't stop you from being on the sidewalk, but we have rented out this space. We have it reserved with the city, and we are asking you to leave.
Yeah, so is this a public park?
It's a reserved space at this time.
Yeah, so I'm just going to give you a little bit of information so you can take this and do what you want with it. I'm not going to be leaving because this is a public park, and whether or not you have a permit here does not change this property to private. So I have every right to be here, and I will not be leaving. So I'm going to walk away from you now. However you choose to go about what you do next is your business. But just so you know that this is not private property, and I have every right to be here. Whether
White people, why is it that y'all don't like hearing about all the horrific things white people did during slavery and after slavery? Does it make you feel some sort of way? I just want to know.
All right, so in 1860, I want you to guess how many white individuals owned slaves. Like, what percentage of white people in the U.S. owned slaves? I'll give you 5 seconds. Across the entire white population in the U.S. in 1860, 1.4% of individuals owned slaves. And I find this interesting because I rarely hear anybody talk about this. In other words, 98.5 to 98.6 out of every 100 white people did not own slaves. So my question to many Black Americans is, why do we continue to act like it was 100% of white people who owned slaves and all white people are responsible for it? Like, you'll see many Black Americans that love to talk about this history and get all, and they don't want to tell you this and they don't want to tell you that, but these same people conveniently leave out that the vast majority of white people did not have slaves. On top of that, many Black Americans act like there was not a civil war fought over slavery. The Civil War was fought over slavery, and over 300,000 male white Union soldiers died in this war. So in essence, there were whites who were fighting to keep us enslaved, and there were whites who were fighting to free us. But it seems like most Black Americans only tend to want to focus on the white Americans who wanted to enslave us. And they treat all white Americans as if they're part of that group, when the reality is clearly they're not and they weren't. Again, only like 1.4 to 1.5% of white individuals in 1860 owned slaves. So again, my 2 questions as of right now would be, why are we acting like all white people owned slaves and supported people owning slaves? And the other question is, why do we act as if there was not a civil war fought by white people to free us from being slaves? It's like many of us only want to focus on the side that was doing wrong and not the side that did right. And I think this is important clarity that's not talked about enough. Like too many of us walk around acting like this was something all white people were doing. It wasn't. So acting like this was all white people is representing a skewed, inaccurate version of history. And many Black Americans somewhat base some of their feelings of white people based off of this skewed, inaccurate representation of history. And I think the more we can bring to light the reality of this can work to help alleviate some of the frustration that Black Americans have with white people, which I think overall would be beneficial. But then the next thing on top of this is it's about time to move on. Like at some point, we have to move on. Like if many Black people spent more time focused on bettering themselves and putting themselves in a better situation compared to talking about racism and white people and complaining about the past, many of us would be far better off. That's just the truth. A lot of that mental energy could go to something much more productive for you and your family and society as a whole. Also, just a reminder, I have a free email newsletter where I go into more detail on many of the topics that I talk about. I cover many things here the mainstream media does not want to cover. Also, like in this video, I show a lot of facts that are inconvenient to the narratives that people want to push. So the link to this is in my bio. Just go to my profile, click the link. You'll see the screen I just showed. Drop your email and hit subscribe and you'll be good to go. That's all I got for now. We'll see you in the next one.
Have you ever wondered if the well-intentioned feeling of white guilt might actually be doing more harm than good? White guilt refers to the feeling of shame or responsibility that some white individuals experience as a result of their perceived role in historical and ongoing racial injustices. This guilt can manifest in a variety of ways, including apologizing for one's whiteness, engaging in performative allyship, or avoiding conversations about race altogether. While the intentions behind white guilt may be well-meaning, it can actually be harmful. First and foremost, it can be patronizing and disempowering to Black people. It reinforces the idea that people of color are victims who need saving rather than agents of their own liberation. It also focuses on the idea that white people commit individual acts of racism rather than acknowledging that racism is a systemic issue that all of us need to work to dismantle. White guilt can be paralyzing. Rather than taking concrete actions to address racial inequality, individuals who feel guilt may become overwhelmed and feel as though there is nothing that they can do to make a difference. This can result in a sense of hopelessness and lack of meaningful progress. So what can we do instead? First and foremost, we need to recognize that feeling guilty about whiteness does not actually solve any problems. Instead, we need to take concrete actions to address systemic racism. This might involve educating ourselves about the history of racism and its ongoing implications, supporting organizations that work to promote racial equity, or having difficult conversations with our friends and family members about race. We also need to be mindful that the ways in which our guilt may inadvertently perpetuate racism. For example, if we are constantly apologizing for our privilege or center conversations around our own feelings of guilt, we are still making the conversation about ourselves rather than about the experiences and needs of Black people. We need to shut up, listen, and learn to the experiences of people of color without dismissing their experiences. While it's important to acknowledge the ways in which our privilege has contributed to systemic racism, we need to be careful not to let that guilt consume us. Instead, we should channel our energy into meaningful conversations and actions that will contribute to a more equitable society for everyone.
Man, I tell you what, nothing makes racist white people more pissed off than me, a white person, trying to educate about racism and trying to educate about what white privilege is and all these things. And it's so funny because these same people will argue with me till they are blue in the face about how they're not racist and we don't live in a racist institution and Black and brown people have it so easy and racism doesn't exist anymore. But then they will turn around and say the most racist, ignorant, vile shit you've ever heard in your life. The disconnect is amazing. And this is why I make content like this, because it's so important, because we do live in a racist institution and we are all raised in racism as white people. This is simply a fact. And the crazy part about it is every one of us knows this. Even the ones who will sit there and fight with me to the death about it and act like it doesn't exist. Y'all know white people are racist. Y'all know about the casual racism, the casual microaggressions that we are raised in, no matter where we live in this United States of America. And this is why I will never stop. I will never stop trying to educate as a white person about racism and how we need to learn. We need to evolve. We need to do better. It's almost as if they feel like admitting to a racist institution or admitting to racism makes them this evil, terrible person. And so they would rather double down than to grow and be a good person. And that's so sad, because all that says to me is that you have a small mind and a cowardly soul. And I wish better for you than that, truly, because everything in your life will get better when you stop being so ignorant.
I've seen a quote here on TikTok that says white people should be happy that as black people we do not want revenge but rather peace and reparations, which is true. Let me paint a picture for you. The main reason why they are so offended with this Land Expropriation Act, let me take it back. I was having a conversation with my lecturer. She is white, by the way, and she said the main reason why they are so offended with the Land Expropriation Act is mainly because that is what they know. Because if you look at academic spaces, which race dominates? That's mainly because us as black people, we see education as our only way out, because we were not born in wealthy families. Our families did not benefit anything from the apartheid era, right? Stay with me now. Because I remember my lecturer telling me that, telling me more about white culture, especially those who own farms. They are like, the minute you're done with matric and your family has a farm, especially if you're a boy, you work the family business. Obviously, you go work at the farm. Hence, we don't see majority of them in academic spaces, right? And also, the fact that there are black people who will come here on the internet and tell us, no, white people should keep the farms mainly because as black people won't be able to manage them. How dare you belittle your own capabilities? I also think that is one of the things that is holding us as black people back. They've damaged our minds to the point whereby we don't even trust ourselves anymore. And that is where the emancipation of the mind comes in. Steve Biko tried to tell us, the youth, that actually you are capable of doing something. You must be proud of your own culture. You must be proud of this. You must be proud of that as a black person. But it's like we have let the apartheid system take on take on so much effect to the point whereby even in language we start saying things like, oh, knowing your language is useless because it's not gonna get you anywhere. No, black people, when you give them businesses, they tend to ruin them to the ground. We do not trust ourselves. That's where the problem comes in, especially with us as black people. It's like these people managed to get into our heads to tell us we are useless, and we just took the concept and we ran with it, unfortunately.
Can someone please explain to me why conservative white men feel they are under attack in the United States? Because the last time I checked, every single U.S. president has been a man. Only one of those men has been a man of color. White men have never been enslaved in this country. White men have never been denied their right to vote in this country, nor has that ever been on the fucking table. Just because people want the same rights that you've always had doesn't mean that you're the victim.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with being white. So why do so many white people hate it when someone addresses their whiteness? White Americans especially cling to the ideas of equality and individuality. that here in the great old US of A, the land of opportunity, anybody can achieve anything if they just put their mind to it. And it's easier to hang on to these ideals by saying things like, I don't see color. Because if they admit that they can see people's differences, then they would have to admit that being white is an advantage. Especially here in America, where there are countless laws and organizations solely dedicated to the oppression of black and brown people. Nobody wants to admit that they benefit from white supremacy. It's incredibly uncomfortable. I mean, trust me, I know, look at my skin color. But white supremacy can't be dismantled until we acknowledge that it exists. And that can be incredibly difficult because as soon as someone gets called white, they get defensive. Instead of listening to the message, they attack the messenger. They ignore facts, they purposely misinterpret what they've been told, they try to just flat out insult the person who's talking to them, just so they can feel better about themselves. Because when you call them white, they feel as though you are ignoring their individualism. You're trying to deny their heritage or invalidate their experiences. Deep down, they know that the concept of race and whiteness are social constructs. And if a white person admits that they benefit from how the world perceives them and not actually for who or what they are, then they admit that they're complicit and comfortable with racism. If you're white and you've made it this far, instead of saying, I didn't have privilege because I was poor or uneducated or my grandparents were immigrants or whatever struggles or hardships you may have had, try asking yourself, how did I benefit from my whiteness despite having those disadvantages? Really think about what your life could have been like if you had that same disadvantage, but you weren't white.
White people, if crime statistics really mattered to us, we would be talking about white men every damn day. We as white people love to throw around statistics when it comes to the black community. We love to misconstrue data about poverty rates, crime rates, single-parent households. Here's the thing. If you really want to talk about problematic behavior in terms of statistics, we need to talk about white men. Most mass shootings in America? White men. School shootings? White men. Intimate partner violence, typically known as domestic violence? White men. Police brutality and systemic violence? White men. Online harassment and extremism? White men. Domestic terrorism? White men. Serial killers? White men. The demographic making up the vast majority of CEOs, judges, senators, and police chiefs who refuse to hold white men responsible? White men. And yet us white men are rarely talked about as being a problem. Few white people are asking, what's wrong with white men? What's wrong with the culture? Few white men are demanding that we be fixed. And why? Because we as white men humanize and individualize white violent offenders. And it's time to flip the script. To shame and blame, because I know white males are incredibly fragile when it comes to that, but instead to name what's really going on and who continues to be protected and not held accountable because of selective storytelling. I hope this helps.
Hey, what's up, fam? How you doing? Welcome back to the channel. I'm hoping that you're doing great from wherever you're watching me from. I'm your host and present Agent X Stories, and this is a fact that we need to address for the longest time, and I addressed this. For the longest time, whenever you see something great trying to happen in the black community, we are always having those group of people that will always try to interfere with this black joy. When people come out and try to celebrate all the achievements, all the things that they've made, like great things that they have done for themselves, there is always an interference. There is always an interference somehow, right? And so we have scholars that have talked about this. Why is it that these people are overly obsessed with black people? Why is it that anytime a black person tries to do something, there is always a person that will sabotage? Because to them, black people don't deserve to be happy. That happiness should only be theirs and not black people. Brothers and sisters, it's important for you to understand that every time a black person starts something, it will always be met with, there's always be a counter. Let's go back to history. When we talk about Tulsa, Oklahoma, when we talk about all these city-states that black people had already developed, like they were growing economically and they were thriving economically. But white people start to eat like, ain't no way these people are going to grow for themselves. We have to do something about it. And what do? They made sure that they wiped out all these states. Get to look at how the black farmers are also thriving. Let's leave alone all the city states. Let's go back to black agriculture. When you talk about black agriculture, you understand that black people had their own communal ways of tilling the land. They had their own communal ways of ensuring that they got the produce from the farm. These triggered white people, specifically white farmers. And they were asking themselves this question: how come we are doing the same thing and you're becoming so successful? And what did they do? They first interfered with the funding of black farmers. Two, they started banning and chasing away these farmers. And later on, they took large tracts of land that belonged to black farmers. And so it's important for you to understand all these part of black history. That's why Carol Anderson was trying to say that it really triggers these people having a black person that has figured it out, having a black person that understands life, having a black person that has their own family in place. Again, I'll take you back to history. Look at when the black man and the black woman were so held strongly. They were held strongly, like the family system in the black community was so strong. And then look at the family system in the black community today. You get to understand how these black joy really interfered with these people. They started bringing division between a black woman and a black man. There was so many propaganda that got into this. These are just instances that black joy really triggers these people. When they noticed that black people were doing well economically, when they noticed that black people were having family unit that was going together, they started making a black man and a black woman fight. There was weaponization of black men against black women. And we've seen how it has taken toll even today in the 21st century, which is still a topic of discussion, right? And so this is something that has been going on just because people are seeing black families standing together, black family going to church together, people doing things like in a family. But what did they do? They bought the division. They made black people start fighting against themselves. They created self-hate by making you think and feel like you're not worthy enough because you are a black person. All these things have happened and it's there in history. I'm not making this up. As the saying goes, you can't make this up. This is something that is out there. This is something that you could just research. It's not a rocket science, right? So all these things that are happening shows you that indeed the black joy really triggers all these folks, because according to them, you don't deserve to be happy. How are you supposed to be happy? Yet you are barely a slave. Yet your ancestors were barely working for these people. Yet your life, your economic life depended on them, the peanuts that they are going to be paying you. And that's why you are seeing all these white farmers demanding. They were demanding. They were not requesting. They were demanding black people to go and work on their farms because that's what they believe black people are. Anytime something happens to a black person, they're not happy. That's why you saw white farmers. They were questioning themselves. Why aren't black people complaining? Because according to them, they don't understand why black people should be calm. It makes them, it triggers them, if you get to understand what I'm talking about. That's why you saw them asking, why aren't we hearing the voices of black people? Why aren't black people complaining about these issues, right? And so for you to understand all this concept that black joy causes what is called white rage, these are things that you need to understand. Because from the examples that I've given you, you need to understand that these things are happening in real time, and brothers and sisters, they exist, right? And so please, let me know what you think about this video. I think we have all learned. I think that at the end of the day, you'll get to understand the perspective that I gave. And we importantly, we all get to learn. All this information is for educational purposes because you can go and research everything that I've talked about and you'll find everything that I've said. And so, brothers and sisters, allow me to end the video at this point, but I'm just going to be asking you again. If you're watching me for the first time, I'm kindly asking you to subscribe to the channel, to join the membership and really get to see what I can offer you. And if you really feel touched today by the content that I produced and you wish to buy me a coffee, I still won't mind. You can buy me a coffee through my Cash App. I'll be really, really grateful for the support that you trying to support the channel. Now, let's meet again on my next video. But until then, peace, love, and harmony. Salud.